I want to break down exactly how much you should have in savings as well as super based on your age bracket. There is so much noise out there around what you need to have to retire properly, what you should be saving, and I'm going to show you how investing can change up what your retirement could look like if it's early retirement or you wait till you're 65 to 70. If you're interested in what my thoughts are, definitely keep watching. Hey guys, my name's Ravi and welcome back to Personal Finance with Ravi Sharma. If you're new here, smash that subscribe button because I talk about real estate, cryptocurrency, and financial freedom. There is so much information out there, some suggesting that you should have multi-million-dollar portfolio, others suggesting that you are completely fine because the average is so below what you think it is, and so you'll survive. Now, you're clearly here to not just have average returns. You're not just going out there and saying, I just want to have average savings to have an average life. You might be watching this to go, how do I retire early, Ravi? And how do I retire on my own terms? Well, let's first go and address what the averages look like and then what you could do to go and surpass that. And believe me, it's actually not that hard to get ahead and set yourself up properly. So let's cover off what savings by age should look like. Now, here's a little table that we can go through. We're going to focus on the average number. And here we've got is under 17, you should have about $3,000. But for the majority of you that watch the channel based on my analytics, we're sitting in this bracket here, between 18 to 44. And so these are going to be the most important. The average savings for people between the ages of 18 and 24 is about $5,000. Then it bumps up to about $8,000 and then bumps up to about $12,000 between the ages of 35 and 44. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds really disturbing because you're most likely in a position where you're probably having to pay rent or you own your own home. And that would mean that that would be your emergency fund. Now, in some cases, you might have some young kids that now rely on you as well. So when I see $12,000 being your average savings, that simply isn't good enough. And I know that not everyone can be in this position, but wouldn't it make more sense to say, okay, I need to change up my living standards and situation so that that number is closer to about $40,000 or $50,000? Because that will provide you more peace of mind. Now, I'm not here to give you financial advice. I'm some guy on YouTube, right? So what the hell do I know? But what I want you to really focus on is how much you need as an emergency buffer and how that gives you more peace of mind and reduces your financial stress. If you're looking at this as the average numbers and saying, hey, you know what? I'm actually doing all right because I've got 30,000 instead of 20,000, or I've got 20,000 instead of 12,000. Given what cost of living crisis we're going through right now and how things are getting even harder to achieve when it comes to home ownership, you really need to start focusing on making moves now. This is why investing is so important. Now, outside of investing, you should still have an emergency fund, and that is different from person to person. It all comes down to your risk appetite and what you're actually investing into. An example of this would be if you have one investment property, you might have an emergency fund of $15,000 for that one property. But if you now have, say, a portfolio of 5 or 6 properties, your emergency buffer may be a lot bigger, because if you have multiple problems at the same time, which although is highly unlikely, could still happen. And in that case, you would definitely need an emergency fund that could cover those expenses. Equally, if you're someone who has young kids and maybe your family is quite big, then you'd probably be looking at emergency funds based on per child or per person that lives in your household. If these are things that you aren't thinking about, I really urge you to start thinking about, because we just don't know how bad the cost of living crisis can continue on for. And this is why it is so scary, especially if you're living in one of the most expensive cities in the entire world, being Sydney or Melbourne. Now let's take a look at what the average super balance is, because while savings is important and it gets you from day to day, your super balance is what most people are focusing on when it comes to retirement. A lot of Australians out there are under the impression that, hey, it's okay if I just live my best life and then eventually I'll get to 65 and I'll have my super to rely on. But if you aren't thinking ahead and actually investing further into your super, then you might be in for a nasty surprise when it comes time to retire. Can you imagine how hard it would be if you get to 65, realize you don't have enough money, and then have to continue working? This one promise you told yourself actually just failed, and that's why we need to be looking ahead of time. You might be in your 20s and thinking, why do I need to care about investing? Why do I care about super? But if you're watching this channel, you probably do care about that, because what nerd wants to sit here and talk about finance with me? Let's continue. Now, this is from the Australian Retirement Trust, and what we're looking at is a survey from 6,000 Australians, and we're looking at what was found. 63% of our members were not sure they will have enough set aside for retirement. 37% felt confident in their financial future, while 54% of members have spent time worrying about their finances at work. And that is the key concern here. That financial stress, while people don't think money is everything. It's not. But if that financial stress exists, trust me, it is going to take over your entire world. What we can see here is the average balance of men and women. And we'll see is 15 to 24, you're looking at 6,500 for men, 5,000 for women. Now, if you go out to the 25 to 34 year olds, it's 42,000 and 34,000. 35 to 44 year olds, it's 107,000 and 76,000. When you get into 45 to 54, it goes up to 219,000 and 136,000. And the reason for the big disparity is because traditionally we've seen women stay at home, taking care of the kids, taking maternity leave, not coming back into work. And that's why we've seen this number so different. However, we are starting to see that number change and improve when it comes to the average women's balance as relative to the average men's balance. The 55 to 64 year old bracket is 326,000. By the time you get to retirement at 65 to 74, you're looking at 435,000 for men and 381,000 for women. As soon as you get to 75 and over, those numbers start declining. Now, let's address that part. Why would they decline after having gone up for so long? And it's because most people will stop working at the age of 65. And that means now you need to rely on the returns you get from your super balance to be able to justify or at least pay for your lifestyle. And that's why that number drops. Now, you can only imagine that if that's from 75 and over, what happens every 5-year increment? If you get to 75 to 80, 80 to 85, 85 to 90, and now with life expectancy increasing, what does that actually mean? It means you're gonna run out of money and you're gonna find yourself having to now limit your budgets around how life looks like at that age bracket, when reality is that you've worked so hard for the last 50 to 60 years only to get into that position. And that simply is not good enough. So with super, you've got two options. One, you can keep it in an industry fund and have it be invested for you, or you can go down the path of a self-managed super fund. Now with a self-managed super fund, you need to go through an accountant to get all that stuff set up, but I'm gonna leave a video up here just to showcase what is possible. I'm not suggesting this is the right option for you, but you just don't know what you don't know. That's why in that video, I share with you how you can use your super balance to go out and invest in real estate. Now that takes care of your super. You've also got to be thinking about your cash balance or emergency fund outside of super. Now I'm going to show you the importance of simply investing a little bit and then how you can really ramp things up and accelerate that growth in your balance by going out and investing in real estate. Now here's an example of using $20,000 if you had it in savings, growing at 5%, what that would look like in 30 years time if you continue to invest only $500 per month and it compounded yearly. Now this scenario here might not suit you, but it could be a balance lower than this or higher than this. But this is the importance of compound growth. If you simply started this at the age of 30 and you went and did this for 30 years on autopilot, this is what it would look like. Your initial balance of $20,000 plus the additional deposits you've made over 30 years, being $180,000, would mean that you would have a future balance of almost $500,000. And this is easy mode. If you really think about it, if you're in a position where you make a good income and you budget well, over the period of 10 years, you should be able to save at least $20,000. If you go and save $20,000, you go and invest it into, say, an ETF, you would go out there and say, okay, every month I'm going to contribute $500 no matter what. And that continues for the next 30 years. And that would then be welcomed with a really nice surprise 30 years later with $500K. Now, one thing to keep in mind though, is that $500K, although sounds great today, it probably doesn't buy you anywhere near enough in 30 years time. And what I mean by that is $200K 30 years ago sounded amazing. And it actually meant that you were quite wealthy because at that point you could probably buy a couple of homes in Sydney. Now, that same amount today means nothing. You can't buy a house in like 99% of Australia with that sort of money. And that's why we need to really carefully go and plan out our retirement early. So if you look at this and say 500K, that sounds great, but it probably is worth closer to about 200K in today's purchasing power, which then means it's not that great. And that's why we need to look at alternative accelerators, but you can definitely combine your accelerator strategy with this as well. Now let's look at what real estate could do. Let's say you went out there and you bought a property for $500,000 at an average growth of 5% for 30 years, compounding yearly. What would that look like? That would mean that one property is now worth $2.1 million. This is on the basis that you pay no debt off, you continue with interest only, you refinance to continue that interest only period, your rents continue to go higher, but so do all your costs, and you end up in a position where that 500K property is now worth $2 million, you could simply sell that one property, pay off all of your debt, and still be in a position where you're probably in hand about $1.5 to $1.6 million, which is 3 times more than the first example. What's even crazier is in this example, you're not contributing $500 every month towards holding that investment. Now, one thing to consider though, is that in this case, you are starting at a higher balance. And the reason for that is because you're using leverage. Now, I will go on to say that this is not possible for everyone, because in example 1, you only needed $20,000. In this example, you're probably needing somewhere closer to about $100,000. And not everyone is in that position. That's why you need to look at all of your options as a whole. You can look at super and self-managed super funds. You can look at your personal situation. You can buy with people. You can use guarantor loans. A lot of these concepts might be new to you, foreign to you, and that's why you need to smash that subscribe button. Go and watch all of the videos I have on this channel. Start from today, go backwards. I make about 2 videos every week. And I'm sure it's going to keep you entertained. And if you want to go out there and execute on this with speed, then definitely contact me. I'll leave a link in the description below for a free call so you can discuss all of your options together. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. And if you have, smash that like button and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks guys.